The morning light shone through the thin curtains of my humble apartment. I, Mabel Huxtable, woke up at 6 a.m. sharp, without even waiting for the alarm clock to ring. 78 years of life have taught me to appreciate every minute, especially the morning one. My apartment is small, a one-bedroom studio in an old but sturdy house on the outskirts of Lakewood. Nothing fancy, but a place I'm proud to call my own. 32 years ago, Wilfred and I made the down payment, and I've never regretted that decision since, not even when I was alone 15 years ago. That afternoon, I lingered in front of the bathroom mirror. Wrinkles, gray hair gathered into a neat bundle, and eyes, the only thing I didn't think had changed in all those years. Just as blue and attentive as they'd been in my youth. I smoothed the collar of my blouse, adjusted my favorite turquoise brooch, a gift from Wilfred on our 20th anniversary, and headed for the kitchen. My morning routine hadn't changed in years. A cup of strong tea, toast with jam, and 15 minutes with the crossword puzzle from the local paper. Then the journey to work, an 18-minute walk to the office of Everett Construction, where I'd worked as an accountant for the past 23 years. The neighborhood where I lived was changing before my eyes. Old houses were being torn down and replaced by glass-fronted high-rises with underground parking lots. My house was still holding up, but I realized that it was only a matter of time. Perhaps that's why I decided to renovate. I wanted my apartment to look decent in the last years of my life. Not luxurious, just modern. The idea for the renovation came to me after a visit to Hazel Compton, an old friend of mine. Her daughter had helped her update her apartment, and I was impressed with the result. Light-colored walls instead of faded wallpaper, new tile in the bathroom, a modern kitchen. It looked like a picture from a magazine. "You should have seen Perkins' face when he arrived for his birthday," Hazel bragged, pouring tea. "Said he didn't even recognize the apartment." Perkins. I've always had mixed feelings at the thought of my son. My only child, whom I loved with all my heart, but with whom we had grown increasingly estranged in recent years. That day, on my way back from Hazel's, I made up my mind that I was going to redecorate. Maybe it would make Perkins visit me more often. Maybe his wife Cheryl would stop wrinkling her nose at my house, or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I was still capable of change. The office greeted me with the usual hum of voices and whirring printers. I said hello to the guard Roy, nodded to the young receptionist Vanity, and headed to my desk. 23 years at the same desk, overlooking the parking lot and the corner of the building next door. All such familiar faces around, such familiar conversations. "Good morning, Mabel," Owen Driscoll, my immediate supervisor, greeted me. "How was your weekend?" "Quiet, Owen, as always," I replied, turning on my computer. "And you?" "The kids dragged us to this new amusement park. You know, the one that opened on the site of the old factory?" He ran his hand over the top of his balding head. "I'm still dizzy from those rides." I nodded, even though I had no idea what he was talking about. Owen was a good boss in his 42 years, fair and considerate. Never made me feel like I was too old for the job. The day went on as usual. Reconciling invoices, entering data, a short lunch at my desk. At 4:30, I shut down the computer, said goodbye to my coworkers, and headed home. On the way, I went to the supermarket to buy food for dinner and a list of necessary purchases for tomorrow. At home, I changed into my clothes, put on the kettle, and turned on the TV to listen to the news. Nothing interesting. The usual stories about politicians, weather, and celebrities whose lives I didn't care much about. In the evening, I got a phone call from Hazel. "Mabel, are you still thinking about remodeling?" she asked me without preamble. "I am," I confessed. "But it's such a hassle. My neighbor's daughter's husband works for a construction company. Good guys, do quality and reasonable prices. I can give your number, let them call?" I agreed, not really believing that anything would come of it. But the next day, I did get a call from Lawrence Fitch at Perfect House. "Mrs. Huxtable? My name is Lawrence Fitch, and I represent Perfect House. We're an apartment remodeling and decorating company. I was told you were interested in our services." His voice sounded professional and confident. We made an appointment to meet at my apartment next Saturday. Lawrence Fitch was a young man of about 35, wearing a neat suit and holding a clipboard. He scrutinized my apartment, taking notes and pictures. "What exactly would you like to change, Mrs. Huxtable?" he asked as we sat down at the kitchen table. I wondered, what did I want? New tile in the bathroom, a modern kitchen, fresh wallpaper, or something more? I want it to look like the picture, I finally said. Bright, modern, cozy, so that I wouldn't be ashamed to invite people to visit. Lawrence nodded understandingly and began to show me pictures on his tablet of various renovation options, from simple cosmetic renovations to complete remodeling. Given the size and layout of your apartment, I'd recommend this one, he said, pointing to a picture of a bright studio with minimalist furniture and large windows. We can remove this wall between the kitchen and the living room, replace all the communications, update the finish. It will turn out to be a modern, functional space. And how much will it cost? I asked, already guessing that the sum would be quite a lot. Lawrence gave me a figure that took my breath away. It was almost all of my savings. I realize it's a lot of money, he said, noticing my confusion. But we can do a line-by-line estimate, and you can decide what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to keep. In the end, we agreed on a compromise. Kitchen and bathroom renovation, replacement of floors and doors, and cosmetic repairs to the walls. It would still cost me a tidy sum, but I decided it was worth it. When can we start? Lawrence asked when we were finished discussing the details. I need to get ready, pack my things, find temporary lodging. We can help with lodging, he offered. We have a partnership with a real estate agency. They offer temporary housing at discounted rates for clients doing renovations. And so began my renovation adventure. The following weeks were spent in troubles. I packed my things, chose samples of finishing materials, met with a designer. Temporary housing was found quickly. A small apartment 2 blocks from my house. Not the most cozy place, but for a couple of months quite suitable. I decided to call Perkins before I started the renovation. Not that I needed his approval, I just wanted to share the news. Cheryl answered the phone as usual. Hello? She sounded annoyed, as if my call had interrupted her from something important. Hello, Cheryl. It's Mabel. Is Perkins home? He's in the shower. Is it an emergency? No, I just wanted to tell him I'm redecorating my apartment. I'm going to be living somewhere else for a while. Renovations? She sounded surprised. Why would you want to renovate at your age? That question hurt me. At my age? As if old age deprives one of the right to comfort and beauty. Because I want to live in a nice, comfortable home, Cheryl, just like any other person. Of course, she said quickly. It's just such a hassle. Perkins will call you back later, okay? But Perkins didn't call back. Not that day, not the next. When renovations started a week later and I moved into my temporary apartment, I sent him a text with my new address and the landlady's phone number in case my phone was unavailable. Got it. Good luck with the renovation, was his entire reply. Perkins wasn't always like this. As a child, he was an inquisitive, affectionate boy. Wilfred and I couldn't get enough of him. A late child, our miracle, our joy. Wilfred taught him to play baseball. I read him books. He loved to sit on my lap while I told him stories of magical worlds and brave heroes. That all changed when Wilfred died. Perkins was 16 at the time, a difficult age in itself, and such a loss. He became withdrawn, rude, blamed me for everything. If only you'd made Daddy go to the doctor sooner, he yelled at me one day. He was complaining of chest pains and you just gave him a pill. It wasn't fair. Wilfred was stubborn like all the men in his family. He hated doctors and always brushed off my requests for a checkup. It's just stress, Mabel, don't make a fuss, he'd say. And then he just didn't wake up one morning. I let Perkins take his pain out on me. I knew he had someone to blame. I hoped that in time he'd grow up and realize that I'd suffered too. That I'd lost someone I loved too. But as the years went by, things didn't get any better. Perkins went off to college in another state, then went to work there. Our phone calls got shorter and shorter, and then he met Cheryl. Cheryl Baxter, now Huxtable, was the kind of woman who would never let you forget how much better they were than you. Her perfect hair, her designer clothes, her manicured hands, everything screamed that she was from another world. A world where people like me have no place. The first time I met her, she looked around my apartment with ill-concealed contempt. Oh, how cozy, she said, and that cozy sounded like a sentence. From then on, she and Perkins came to visit me only on major holidays, and not for long. Always in a hurry, always had other plans. Mom, I'm sorry, but Cheryl has a client meeting. Mom, we can't stay for dinner. Our friends are waiting for us. Mom, we just dropped by to congratulate you. We have to go. I never showed how much it hurt. I smiled, nodded understandingly, offered to take home baked goods with me. And then I stood at the window for a long time, watching their expensive car disappear around the corner. The temporary lodging was smaller than I had expected, and less comfortable. The landlady, Mrs. Parker, was a widow about my age, but with a very different temperament, noisy, curious, and constantly meddling in the affairs of the tenants. "So you're renovating," she exclaimed as she helped me put things away. "What are you changing?" I briefly described my plans. "Oh, that sounds wonderful." She splashed her hands. "What does your son say?" "He's probably happy that his mom is spoiling herself?" I shrugged uncertainly, not wanting to discuss my relationship with Perkins. "He's busy. He's got his own life." I see, Mrs. Parker nodded understandingly. "Young people are so busy these days. My grandchildren don't come around much either. Things to do, things to do. How long will the renovation take?" "A couple of months, no more," I answered, hoping that it will be so. "Well, make yourself at home." She headed for the door. "If you need anything, I'm across the hall." The first few days in the new place were strange. Unusual sounds, unfamiliar smells, a different view from the window. But gradually I got used to it. Every morning I went to work, and after work I looked in my apartment to see how the renovations were going. Lawrence and his team worked quickly and efficiently. Old walls disappeared, new partitions appeared, pipes and wiring were changed. My modest apartment was gradually turning into a construction site full of dust, tools, and building materials. "Everything is going according to plan, Mrs. Huxtable," Lawrence assured me every time I met him. "In a couple of weeks, we'll start the finishing work, and then you'll be able to imagine what the end result will look like." I believed him and looked forward to returning to my new home. I imagined inviting guests over for tea. How surprised Perkins would be to see the transformed apartment. How maybe even Cheryl would find a few words of encouragement. At work, things went on as usual. Everett Construction was a stable company with a good reputation. I had been in accounting for so many years that I could perform my duties with my eyes closed. Colleagues respected me for my experience and reliability, and management valued me for my accuracy and punctuality. But lately I've been noticing strange changes. Meetings behind closed doors, whispers in the corridors, tense faces of managers. Something was happening, and it didn't bode well. "Mabel, do you know what's going on?" Vanity, the young secretary, asked me one day. "Everyone's been a little jumpy lately." "I have no idea, dear," I answered honestly. "But if I find out anything, I'll be sure to tell you." That same day, Owen Driscoll invited me into his office. He looked tired and worried. "Have a seat, Mabel," he said, pointing to the chair across from his desk. "How are your repairs coming along?" I was surprised at the start of the conversation, but I replied, "Good, thank you. We've already started the finishing work." "That's good," he rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Listen, Mabel, you've been with us for, how long? 23 years? 23 years and 4 months, I clarified. "Yeah, that's right." He smiled weakly. "You've always been accurate with numbers. That's why you're such a valuable employee. That's why it's so hard for me to say what I have to say." My heart twitched. Something in his tone, in his look, told me I was about to hear bad news. "Mabel, the company is going through a rough patch. The last 2 projects were unprofitable, investors are unhappy, the market is unstable." He said something else about financials and strategic decisions, but I could already guess where he was going with it. "Owen," I interrupted him, "is the company closing?" He looked at me in surprise, then nodded slowly. "Not right away. We'll be phasing it out gradually. Some will lose their jobs sooner, some later. But yes, eventually, Everett Construction will cease to exist." "When?" was all I could ask. "It'll be made official next week. But I wanted to warn you personally. You deserve it for all your years of excellent work." I sat still, trying to comprehend what I was hearing. 23 years, almost a quarter of a century with the same company, and suddenly, it's over. "What will happen to the employees?" I finally asked. "Everyone will be compensated according to their seniority. You, with your experience, are entitled to a decent amount, and of course, references. Although, he hesitated. It's not going to be easy to find a new job at my age, I finished for him. Owen nodded guiltily. I'm sorry, Mabel. If it were up to me, I understand. I stood up. Thanks for the heads up. I walked out of Owen's office and went straight to my desk, sitting down and staring at the computer screen. The numbers and spreadsheets I'd been working with all these years suddenly lost all meaning. I felt the ground go from under my feet. What was I going to do? At my age, the chances of finding a new job are slim to none. My pension is barely enough for the bare necessities. And now this renovation. I've already invested most of my savings in it. I expected to keep working and earning until the renovation was finished. And now, I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I mechanically performed my duties, answered my coworkers' questions, but my thoughts were far away. I thought about the future that had suddenly become so uncertain, and about the past that had brought me to this moment. In the evening, back at the rental apartment, I sat at the window for a long time, looking out at the lights of the city. Lakewood never sleeps, people going about their business, cars rushing down the road, life bustling. And I felt thrown out of the flow, unwanted, forgotten. What should I do? This question was going around in my head, not letting me sleep. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to talk to Perkins. Not to ask for help? No. Just to share my problems, for advice. After all, he is my son, my family. Who better to listen to me in my time of need? Monday was cloudy and dank, as if nature itself had adjusted to my depressed state. I stood in the lobby of our office with other employees, listening to the official announcement of the company's closure. The CEO, Mr. Everett, looked haggard as he spoke of adverse market conditions and forced measures, words that were supposed to explain why 37 people would soon be out of work. The process will be gradual, he said, trying to sound optimistic. Everyone will be compensated according to their length of service. We'll also provide letters of recommendation and help with job placement if possible. Next to me, Vanity sobbed quietly. She was only 24, had recently paid off her college loans, and was just starting to save for her own place. I squeezed her hand, trying to support her, even though I could feel the ground shifting out from under my feet. How long do we have left? Someone in the back asked. We'll keep the finance and accounting departments until the end, so that we can close everything correctly, Mr. Everett answered. That's about 2 months. The construction crews will be disbanded sooner once they finish their current projects. 2 months. Only 60 days, and my career as an accountant, to which I've devoted nearly a quarter of a century, will be over. What will I do then? Who needs an accountant at 78? After the meeting, everyone slowly went to their desks. Some discussed what had happened, some called their families, some just sat staring at one point. I turned on my computer and tried to focus on the numbers, but my thoughts kept returning to my uncertain future. On my lunch break, Owen came up to me. How are you holding up, Mabel? He asked, sitting down on the edge of my desk. I've been better, I answered honestly. But I'll get through it. It wouldn't be the first time life had thrown me a surprise. I've been talking to a few people I know from other companies, Owen began gently. They mentioned you, your experience and professionalism, but I knew there would be a but. But they're looking for, he hesitated, searching for words, for longer-term staffing solutions. I chuckled bitterly. The euphemisms for age discrimination were getting more and more sophisticated. Thank you, Owen. I appreciate your help, I really do. Don't give up, Mabel. He squeezed my shoulder. You're the best accountant I've ever worked with. Any company would be happy to have you. I nodded, not wanting to argue. Owen was a kind man, but even he couldn't change the reality of the labor market. That evening, back at the rental apartment, I spread out all my bills and financial documents on the table. Compensation for redundancy, 12 weeks salary plus payment for unused vacation, pension, her remaining savings, and on the other side, the cost of rented accommodation, paying for repairs, the daily expenditure on food and medication. The numbers were inexorable. Even with the compensation, I'd have enough money for 3 months at the most if I saved on everything. And then? The repairs were supposed to be finished in 6 to 7 weeks, but I knew from experience There are always unforeseen delays and extra costs. I could feel the panic coming in waves. My heart was pounding so hard it was hard to breathe. I went to the window, opened it, and took a deep breath of the evening air. Calm down, Mabel, I said to myself. You survived your husband's death, raised your son alone, handled the mortgage. You'll get through this too. But the fear wouldn't let up. I imagined going back to an unfinished apartment, living among construction dust and unfinished work because I ran out of money. Or worse, losing the apartment altogether because I couldn't pay my debts. At night, I dreamt of Wilfred. He was standing in our old kitchen, as young and handsome as he had been at the beginning of our married life, and he was saying something important. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt their significance. I woke up with my cheeks wet with tears and a strange sense of determination. At breakfast, the phone rang. It was Lawrence from the construction company. Good morning, Mrs. Huxtable. I'm calling to tell you the good news. We found a supplier with better quality tiles for your bathroom at the same price. I'd like to show you some samples. Would you be able to stop by after work today? Sure, I replied, not mentioning my imminent unemployment. I'll be there around 6. The swatches Lawrence showed me were indeed better than the previous ones, with a clearer pattern and a nice texture. I chose a soft blue tile with a light marble pattern. That's an excellent choice, Mrs. Huxtable, Lawrence said. It will be very elegant. By the way, the work is even ahead of schedule. If this continues, you'll be able to get back to your apartment 2 weeks early. This news should have made me happy, but instead it brought on a new wave of anxiety. Earlier means you have to make the final payment sooner. And money was getting tight. That's great, I forced a smile. Lawrence looked at me carefully. Is something wrong, Mrs. Huxtable? Is something bothering you about the work? I shook my head. No, the work is going fine. It's just... I hesitated, not sure if I should share my concerns. It's just that my company is closing down. I'm going to lose my job soon. Lawrence frowned. I'm sorry. Is that causing financial hardship for you? You could say that, I grinned sadly. But don't worry. I'll meet all my payment obligations. I don't doubt it, he said quickly. But if you need some adjustments to the payment schedule, or maybe we could cut back a little on the scope of work to keep the costs down. His offer was sincere, but I knew that even with a reduced scope of work, I still wouldn't be able to pay for both the repairs and the rent without a steady income. Thank you, Lawrence. I'll think about it. I spent the next few days thinking about it. I looked for a job, no luck. I counted and recalculated my finances, with disappointing conclusions. Considered various options for saving money, but they weren't enough. On Thursday night, sitting in the tiny living room of my rented apartment with a cup of cheap tea, I made a decision. I need to talk to Perkins. Not to ask for money. No, I won't do that. But maybe he'd let me stay with them until the renovations were finished. That would solve the problem of paying for rent and give me time to find a new source of income. I sat with my phone in my hands for a long time, gathering my courage. Perkins and I had only spoken a few times in the past few months, and all of the conversations had been short and perfunctory. I knew Cheryl wouldn't be happy to have me in their house, but there was no choice. Finally, I dialed the number. Cheryl answered the phone as I expected. Good evening, Cheryl, I said in as cheerful a voice as possible. It's Mabel. Is Perkins home? He's working late, she said. Is it urgent? No, not really, I stammered. When he gets back, could you ask him to call me back? I need to discuss an important matter with him. Is there anything I can do to help? There was no genuine interest in her voice, more of a polite formality. I'm afraid it's better to discuss it in person, I answered evasively. Just ask him to call, okay? Sure, Cheryl said. I'm not sure when he'll be free, though. He's got an important project right now. I understand. Thanks, Cheryl. Perkins didn't call that night or the next day. When 3 days passed without a response, I decided to take a different course of action, to go to their house. It didn't take long to pack. I put on my best suit, dark blue, with a neat white blouse, applied light makeup, and even styled my hair a little neater than usual. Not that I hoped to impress Cheryl, but my dignity demanded that I look dignified. Perkins and Cheryl's house was in an upscale neighborhood in Lakewood, a large, 2-story mansion with a perfectly mowed lawn and 3 cars in the garage. Every time I came here, I felt out of place, like I'd accidentally wandered into someone else's life. Cheryl opened the door and stood on the threshold, not inviting me in. Mabel, we weren't expecting you. I'm sorry for the sudden visit, I said calmly. Is Perkins home? No, he got held up at work. Is it urgent? I hesitated. I didn't want to tell Cheryl about my problems, but I had no choice. I lost my job, I began. The company's closing. And I'm renovating my apartment, moving into temporary housing. I'm running out of money, and it's hard to find a new job at my age. Cheryl crossed her arms over her chest. Minus I? What can we do to help? I was thinking, maybe I could stay with you guys for a while. Until my apartment is finished being remodeled. It would help me save money on rent. Cheryl looked at me like I was suggesting something obscene. We don't have a guest room, she said after a pause. We converted it into a home office for Perkins. I could sleep on the couch in the living room. My voice sounded almost pleading. I wouldn't take up much space. Look, Mabel, Cheryl sighed. I don't think it's a good idea. We have our own lives, our own routines. Perkins works late, I get up early. It would be an inconvenience to everyone. I realize that, but, you better wait for Perkins, she interrupted me. He'll be back late. Maybe you can talk some other time. I realized I was being sent away, but I couldn't just leave. I'll wait for him here if you don't mind. It's really important. Cheryl clearly didn't mind, but she didn't dare kick me out the door. Okay, she hissed. Come on in, but I warned you he'd be late. Perkins and Cheryl's living room looked like a page out of an interior design magazine. Perfectly chosen furniture, expensive jewelry, not a single extra thing. I crouched on the edge of the couch, afraid of getting anything dirty or moving. Cheryl sat in the chair across from me with a tablet in her hands, defiantly ignoring me. The minutes dragged agonizingly slow. Would you like some tea? I asked, breaking the silence. No thanks, Cheryl said, not taking her eyes off the screen. I started looking at the pictures on the walls. Perkins and Cheryl on vacation at some kind of reception with friends. Not a single picture of me. Not a single reminder that Perkins had a mother. It got dark outside the window. Cheryl left the room a few times, talking on the phone, doing something in the kitchen. I sat still, as if afraid that any movement might give her an excuse to kick me out the door. Finally, there was the sound of a car pulling up. The door slammed, the keys jingled. Perkins stepped inside, and I heard Cheryl's voice. We have a visitor. Your mother is waiting for you in the living room. Perkins walked into the living room, loosening his tie as he went. His face was tired and annoyed. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, then smiled strainedly. Mom, is something wrong? I got up from the couch, feeling my heart pounding. Despite the strained relationship, this was my son, my flesh and blood, the man I'd raised and loved with all my heart. Hello, Perkins. I'm sorry for the sudden visit, but I need to talk to you. He glanced at Cheryl, who crossed her arms over her chest and pressed her lips together. I'm listening, he said, without motioning for me to sit back down, as if he expected the conversation to be short and for me to leave immediately. I'm in trouble, I began, trying to keep my voice firm. The company I was working for is closing down. I lost my job. I'm sorry, Perkins said without much sympathy in his voice. But don't you have a pension? Of course I have a pension, but it's not enough, especially now that I'm renovating my apartment and having to rent temporary housing. Perkins frowned. You started renovating knowing you might lose your job? No, of course not, I shook my head. The renovation started before they announced the company was closing. I couldn't have foreseen. You should always have a financial cushion for such events. Perkins interrupted me in the tone one would use with a negligent subordinate. Basic financial literacy. I felt my cheeks burn with shame and resentment. I had savings, I said. But the renovations were more expensive than I'd planned, and finding a new job at my age? What do you want us to do? Perkins interrupted me again. There was a note of impatience in his voice. Money? No. I took a deep breath, preparing to say the words I was struggling to say. I was going to ask you to let me stay here for a while, until my apartment is finished being remodeled. It would help me save money on rent and live here? Perkins looked stunned, like I was suggesting something totally unacceptable. But we don't have a guest room. I know, Cheryl already told me. I could sleep on the couch in the living room, or even in the basement if there's room. I won't take up much space, I promise. Perkins glanced over to Cheryl, who shook her head faintly. Look, Mom, he began, and I could tell from his tone that I was going to hear the rejection. Cheryl and I are very busy with work. We have our own routines, our own habits. Having a third person in the house would be inconvenience. I understand, I said, though I didn't really understand how my own son could consider his mother's presence an inconvenience. But it's temporary, just a few weeks. What if the repairs take longer? Cheryl joined the conversation. It happens all the time. It starts with a few weeks and ends with months. The contractor said the work was ahead of schedule, I countered. 6 weeks tops, and I'll be able to come back. And then what? Perkins ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he'd learned from his father. You'll still be out of work. How are you going to live? I'll get a job, I said with more confidence than I felt. Or a part-time job. Maybe I'll do bookkeeping for small businesses from home. I have a lot of experience. I can do it. Perkins shook his head. Mom, be realistic. At your age, the chances of getting a job. At my age? I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. What's wrong with my age? I'm still sane. I have a steady hand and good eyesight. I can work as well as the young ones. It's not about your ability, Perkins said, as if he were explaining a truism to a child. It's just that companies prefer to hire people who have years of service ahead of them. It's business, nothing personal. It's very personal to me, I said quietly. There was an awkward pause. Cheryl glanced defiantly at her watch. It's late, she said. We have to get up early tomorrow. It was a clear indication that I should leave, but I couldn't give up so easily. Perkins, please. I took a step toward my son. I've never asked you for anything. All these years since your father died, I've been doing it on my own. But now I really need help, just for a few weeks. For a moment, I thought there was something like doubt in his eyes. But then he looked at Cheryl and his face turned hard again. Mom, I can't. We have our own lives, our own plans. We can't rebuild everything because of your mistakes. My mistakes? I questioned, not believing my ears. What mistakes? You undertook an expensive renovation without a steady income or sufficient savings, Perkins said in the tone of a financial advisor. It was irresponsible. I didn't know I was going to lose my job, I repeated. No one knew. The company seemed stable. In today's world, you have to be prepared for anything, Perkins shook his head, especially at your age when it's hard to find a new job. His words hurt worse than a slap. Is that really my son? The boy I'd raised with so much love, the boy I'd done anything for? I understand, I said finally, trying to keep my dignity. I'm sorry I bothered you. I turned to go to the door, but Perkins stopped me. Wait, Mom, maybe we could help you, financially. Just a small amount so you can pay the rent while we renovate. The offer sounded like a handout, not shelter under my own son's roof, but money to keep me at a distance. I felt something break inside. Thank you, but no, I replied, straightening my back. I'll be fine on my own. Don't be stubborn. Perkins was getting impatient. If you're having financial difficulties. I'm not just having trouble financially, Perkins. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm having trouble understanding how my own son can deny me a roof over my head, even a temporary one. I've already explained why it's inconvenient. His voice turned cold. If you don't want to accept the help I'm offering, that's your choice. And your choice is to kick your mother out the door. I couldn't contain my bitterness. No one's kicking you out, Cheryl interjected. We just can't give you a place to live. There's a difference. Not for someone without a roof over their head, I replied. You have a roof over your head, Perkins objected. You said yourself you're renting an apartment, which I won't be able to pay for anytime soon. That's not our problem, Cheryl said like a slap in the face. Perkins gave her a warning look but didn't object, and that silence told me more than any words could. Certainly not yours, I grinned bitterly. What could be further from your problems than an old mother who lost her job? Mom, you're being dramatic, Perkins sighed. No one's calling you an old lady. But you treat me that way. I looked up at him. Like I'm a burden to get rid of. It's not fair. Perkins was getting angry. I offered financial assistance. Money isn't everything, Perkins. Sometimes people just need support, understanding, family. And you think you have the right to demand sacrifice from us just because we're family? Cheryl didn't hide her irritation. We're adults with our own lives, not a charity organization for relatives. I looked at her in amazement. Is asking for temporary shelter a victim request? Could having an elderly person in the home for a few weeks really disrupt their adult life so dramatically? Cheryl, please. Perkins tried to stop her again, but she wasn't listening. No, Perkins, it's time to tell the truth. We don't have to solve your mother's problems. She has her life. We have ours. She made an unwise choice with this renovation. Now let her deal with the consequences. I felt tears coming to my eyes, but I held them back. I won't give them that pleasure. You're right, Cheryl, I said calmly. You have your own life, and I won't be a part of it anymore. I turned toward the door, but Perkins grabbed my arm. Mom, wait. Don't go like that. How do I leave, Perkins? I released my hand. With a smile and a thank you for refusing? I just can't give you a place to stay. He looked annoyed. Why are you making such a tragedy out of this? Because you're my son, my only child, the man I've denied myself everything for. And now the first time I ask for help, you turn your back on me. I'm not turning my back, Perkins raised his voice. I offered you money. I didn't want your money. I wanted my son. What do you want from me, Mom? He was almost shouting. For me to put your needs before the needs of my wife, my family? I am your family, I was yelling now. Or have you forgotten that? No, you're my mother, and my family is Cheryl, and my priorities have changed. It's time you realize that. His words hit me like a hammer. I felt the ground slipping away from under my feet. For so many years, I had invested all my love, all my care in him. I was willing to make any sacrifice for his well-being. And now I was just an old woman to him, not even part of his real family. I get it, Perkins, I said quietly. I really understood now. I picked up my bag and headed for the exit. Perkins followed me. Mom, don't make a drama out of this, he said. We can find another solution. Don't bother, I replied, without turning around. I won't bother you anymore. What's the matter with you? He grabbed my shoulder, turning me around. Why can't you just accept my help in whatever form I can offer it? Because I need more than that, I looked into his eyes. I need to know that my son still loves me. That I still matter to him. Of course I love you. He rolled his eyes. But that doesn't mean I have to sacrifice my comfort every time you're in trouble. Every time? I grinned bitterly. Perkins, I've never, ever asked you for help before today. Is that supposed to make me feel guilty? He crossed his arms over his chest. Maybe if you asked for help more often, I'd get used to it and learn to say no without these scenes. I looked at him and didn't recognize him. Where had my sweet boy gone? When did he turn into this cold, calculating man? You know what the saddest thing is, Perkins? I said. It's not that you refuse to help. It's that you don't even see the harm in it. Because there's nothing wrong with it. He raised his voice. Adults have the right to live their own lives without obligation to their parents. And parents, then, have only obligations to their children, but not the other way around? I asked. Interesting logic. We don't owe you just because you gave birth to me. His words sounded like a slap. You did what all parents should do. It was your choice. And now it's my choice to leave, I said, opening the door. Goodbye, Perkins. Mom, wait! He grabbed my hand again. You can't just leave. Where are you going? Don't worry. I pulled my hand free. I can handle it. I've always managed. Without the money, you're no good to me or my wife, so go! Perkins suddenly shouted, losing control of himself. If you're so proud that you can't accept financial help, then don't come here with your problems. I froze on the threshold, unable to believe my ears. Was it my son who was saying such horrible things? Perkins! Even Cheryl looked shocked. What? He snapped. I'm just telling the truth. She comes in here with demands, refuses the help I offer, and then makes a monster out of me. I'm tired of it. You're not a monster, Perkins, I said quietly. You're just a man who's forgotten what it means to be a son. With those words, I walked out of the house, closing the door behind me. The cold evening air hit my face, but I hardly felt it. There was such an emptiness inside, such pain that the external sensations just didn't register. I walked slowly toward the bus stop, not noticing passers-by or cars. Perkins' words echoed in my head. Without money, neither I nor my wife need you. Was it really all about money? For today's children, are parents just a source of financial support? And when that source dries up, they become unnecessary? The bus came almost immediately. I sat at the window and watched the lights of Lakewood go by. The city never sleeps, people going about their business, cars rushing down the road, life bustling. And I felt thrown out of the flow, lonely and unwanted. As I got off at my stop, I noticed a small store on the corner. Usually I walked past it, saving every dollar I could. But today something pushed me to go inside. Maybe I just didn't want to go back to my empty apartment. Behind the counter stood an older man with kind eyes and a gray beard. "What can I do for you, ma'am?" he asked in a slight accent. I looked around. A typical small store, drinks, snacks, cigarettes, lottery tickets. "Would you give me, please?" I hesitated, not knowing exactly what I wanted to buy. My eyes fell on a rack of lottery tickets. One lottery ticket. "Which one?" The salesman smiled. "We have different kinds." "The cheapest one," I answered, opening my wallet. There were only $5 in change left in my wallet, the last money until my next pension. I should have saved every dime, but at that moment I didn't care. What did it matter exactly how I spent that measly $5? The clerk handed me a ticket. "Your change, ma'am." I took the coins and the ticket, thanked the clerk, and walked out of the store. Only on the street did I look at what I had bought. A regular Mega Millions lottery ticket with 6 random numbers. The chance of winning was slim to none, but I didn't care. I just wanted to do something irrational, something that didn't fit into my normal, rational life. Back at the rental apartment, I threw the ticket on the table and didn't even look at it. My thoughts still swirled around the conversation with Perkins. Every word he'd said was like a knife to my heart. I felt betrayed, rejected, unwanted. I hardly slept that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about my life, the choices I'd made, the roads I didn't take, about how things might have turned out differently if only... If what? If I'd been a different mom, if Wilfred hadn't died so young, if Perkins had married another woman. I looked awful this morning, pale, with circles under my eyes, my face swollen with tears. But I had to get to work. Before the company closed down for good, I had to fulfill my duties. The day passed like a blur. I mechanically performed the usual actions, answered my colleagues' questions, filled out documents, but my thoughts were far away. In the evening, I returned to the rented apartment, and the first thing I saw was a lottery ticket on the table. I took it in my hands, looking at the numbers. 32, 17, 53, 9, 21, and an extra number, 7. A random set that probably wouldn't bring anything. A newscast was just starting on the TV. I turned it on just to fill the silence and began preparing a modest dinner of scrambled eggs and toast. The news anchor woman was talking about some political events, the weather, sports competitions. I hardly listened, immersed in my own thoughts. And now the results of yesterday's Mega Millions drawing. The anchor woman's words brought me back to reality. The winning combination, 32, 17, 53, 9, 21, and an additional number, 7. I froze with the spatula in my hand. Those numbers sounded familiar, very familiar. I slowly turned to the table where my ticket lay. "Repeat the winning combination," the announcer continued. 32, 17, 53, 9, 21, and an additional number, 7. The jackpot was $1 million. The winning ticket was purchased in Lakewood at Sam's on Oak Street, the corner store, the same one where I bought the ticket. I grabbed it and started checking the numbers. 32 matched. 17, it's the same. 53, it's a match. 9, it's the same. 21 matched. The extra number 7 is a match. All the numbers matched. Every single one. I was holding the ticket that had just won $1 million. My knees gave out and I slumped in my chair. That's impossible. There's no such thing. Yesterday I lost my son and today I won $1 million. It was as if fate itself had decided to step in and compensate me for my pain. $1 million, I whispered. looking at the ticket. $1 million. I couldn't believe what was happening. It seemed like a dream, a fantasy. Coincidences like this just don't happen in real life. But the ticket was real. The numbers matched. The store was the same store. I really had won $1 million. My first thought was to call Perkins, tell him about the win. But then I remembered his words. Without the money, neither my wife nor I need you. What would he say now? That he'll suddenly realize how much he loves his mother? That he'll find a place in his house for me? Number I won't call. Not now. First, I need to realize what happened and decide what to do next. I turned off the stove. Dinner was forgotten. There were more important things to think about now. How to get the winnings. Where to apply. How long would it take? What to do with the money? Dozens of questions swarmed in my head, but one thing I knew for sure. Life had just taken a sharp turn. The morning after the win didn't start with the usual ringing of the alarm clock, but with the frantic pounding of my heart. The first thing I did was rush to the table where I had left the lottery ticket. It was lying where I'd put it, a plain piece of paper that had changed my entire life. I double-checked the numbers again, checking against the lottery website on my old laptop. There was no doubt about it. I had indeed won $1 million. After a brief internet search, I learned that to claim such a large win, you have to go directly to the lottery office, not the store where the ticket was purchased. Fortunately, the main state lottery office was located in Lakewood, just a 30-minute bus ride from my temporary home. I called work and took the day off for the first time in 23 years, claiming I was sick. Owen didn't ask any questions. The company was closing anyway, and we were all on hold. Before I left the house, I carefully tucked the ticket into the inside pocket of the old jacket Wilfred had worn. I'd kept it all these years and sometimes wore it when I missed my husband. Today, that jacket seemed the safest place to store my treasure. At the lottery office, I was greeted by a friendly young woman behind the reception desk. "What can I do for you?" she asked with a professional smile. "Yeah, I think I won the lottery." My voice sounded uncertain, as if I still couldn't believe what was happening. "Congratulations!" Her smile grew wider. "How much money, if it's no secret?" $1 million, I said almost in a whisper. The girl blinked, her smile frozen for a moment. $1 million? In that case, you need to see our big win specialist. Please wait a moment. She picked up the phone and spoke quietly to someone. A few minutes later, a distinguished-looking middle-aged man in a smart suit appeared. "Minus Ms. Huxtable? My name is Garrett Whitmore, and I'm a specialist in working with big prize winners. Would you come with me, please?" He led me into a spacious office with a large desk and comfortable chairs. "So I understand that you have the winning Mega Millions ticket?" he asked as we sat down. I pulled the ticket out of my inside jacket pocket and held it out to him. Garrett took it with care, as if it were a fragile ancient artifact, and examined it closely. "That's right," he said after a pause. "Congratulations, Miss Huxtable. You have indeed won $1 million. Now we have some paperwork to do." The next 2 hours were spent in paperwork. I filled out forms, signed documents, showed my ID and social security number. Garrett patiently explained each step of the process. "You have 2 options for receiving your winnings," he explained. "You can receive the entire amount in a lump sum, tax deductible, which is about $600,000. Or you can receive payments every year for 20 years, about $50,000 a year, also tax deductible." I wondered. At my age, 20 years is a long time. Who knows how long I have left? Plus, I wanted to be able to use the money right away, fix my repair problems, maybe help someone else. "I'll take the lump sum," I decided. "Good choice," Garrett nodded. "Now for the bank details. Where would you like the transfer to go?" We discussed the banking details, and I learned that the money would be deposited into my account within 2 to 3 weeks after all the checks were completed. "One more important thing," Garrett continued. "By law, information about lottery winners is public. This means that your name and your winnings will be published on our website and possibly in the media. We also hold a press conference with big prize winners, but that is not required." The thought of publicity didn't make me happy. I imagined how people would start calling, asking for money, giving advice. "Is there any way to avoid publicity?" I asked. "Unfortunately, not in our state." Garrett shook his head. "But you can opt out of the press conference. We'll just publish your name on the list of winners. I've opted for minimal publicity, no press conferences, no interviews, just the bare minimum of information. One last thing. Garrett pulled a business card from his desk drawer. These are the contacts for our financial consultant. He specializes in working with lottery winners and can help you manage your winnings. The first consultation is free. I took the card, thanked Garrett for his help, and walked out of the lottery office feeling like I had just finished a marathon. Emotional and physical exhaustion mixed with the euphoria of realizing that I was now rich? Could $600,000 be considered wealth? For me, accustomed to saving every dollar, it was a colossal sum. The next day, I went to work as usual. No one knew about my winnings, and I wasn't going to share the news. Let it go. The company was closing, and the accounting department had to work for about another month to finalize everything. This month, I decided to work honestly, as I had for the previous 23 years. After work, I stopped by my apartment to check on the renovations. Lawrence greeted me with a smile. Mrs. Huxtable, it's good to see you. We've made great progress. We've finished tiling the bathroom and installed new plumbing. Would you like to see it? I followed him into the bathroom and gasped. The blue marble tile I'd chosen had transformed the room. A new sink, a modern shower stall instead of the old bathtub. It all looked fresh and stylish. It's, amazing, I breathed out. And that's not all. Lawrence led me into the kitchen. We've installed the new cabinets and countertops. We just need to hook up the appliances and the kitchen will be ready. I looked around at the space that used to be a cramped, outdated kitchen. Now it was bright and airy, with white cabinets and wood countertops that looked both modern and cozy. When can I come back? I asked. If everything goes as planned, 2 weeks, Lawrence answered. I still had to finish the walls, install new doors, and put in laminate flooring in the living room. I hesitated, not knowing how to delicately bring up the issue of payment. Don't worry about the final payment, Lawrence said, as if he'd read my mind. We can discuss a schedule that suits you. No, it's fine, I smiled. I'll be able to make full payment as soon as the work is completed. Lawrence raised his eyebrows in surprise, but said nothing. I said goodbye and left the apartment with a light heart. Now I didn't have to worry about money for repairs. I could afford everything I had planned and more. The very next day, however, the situation changed. As I walked past the front desk of our office, I heard Vanity discussing the latest news with the security guard. Imagine it's our Mabel who won the lottery, she said excitedly. I just read it on the lottery website. $1 million. I froze, not knowing what to do. Should I run, pretend I hadn't heard? Before I could decide, Vanity spotted me and ran up wide-eyed. Mabel, is it true? You won $1 million? There was no point in denying it. It was already official. Yes, I answered quietly. It's true. The office exploded with cheers and congratulations. Colleagues hugged me, clapped me on the shoulder, asked dozens of questions. I answered with restraint, not going into detail. Yes, I won. No, I haven't gotten the money yet. No, I'm not planning a trip around the world. By lunchtime, the news had spread throughout the building. Even Mr. Everett came down from his office to congratulate me in person. I can't tell you how happy I am for you, Mabel, he said, shaking my hand. After so many years of faithful service, you deserve this gift of fate. After work, when I returned to my apartment, I found 5 missed calls from Perkins and 1 message. Mom, please call me back. It's important. I stared at the phone screen, feeling a wave of bitterness rising inside. Of course he already knows about the win. News travels fast in a small town, especially such sensational news, and now, all of a sudden, I was important to him. The phone rings again. Perkins. I hesitated, but finally answered. Hello? Mom, finally, I've been trying to reach you all day. Perkins sounded excited. Is it true? Did you really win $1 million? Hello, Perkins, I answered coldly. Yes, it's true. My God, that's amazing! Congratulations! He spoke as enthusiastically as if he hadn't kicked me out the door 3 days ago. When do you get the money? Do you have any plans yet? In a couple weeks. And yes, I have plans. This is unbelievable, Mom. So lucky. I'm so happy for you. His voice sounded fake. Or maybe it was my resentment distorting my perception. Either way, I didn't feel like having this conversation. Thanks for the congratulations, Perkins. I have to go. It's been a tiring day. Wait, Mom? There was a note of desperation in his voice. Look, I wanted to apologize for the other night. I said some terrible things. I was wrong. You wouldn't believe how I felt after you found out you won? I finished it for him. No, he exclaimed. I felt terrible right after you left. Cheryl and I even had a fight about it. I wanted to call you the next day, but I was afraid you wouldn't want to talk to me. All of a sudden today, you're not afraid anymore? There was a pause on the line. I understand how it looks, Perkins said finally. But I swear I wanted to call before I even knew I'd won. It's just, the news gave me courage. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. Part of me wanted to believe that my son was truly remorseful. The other part, still hurt by his words, remained wary. Mom, let's meet, Perkins suggested. Let's have a normal conversation. I was wrong and I want to apologize in person. Why, Perkins? I asked tiredly. What's changed? Everything has changed. I realized how much you mean to me. How stupid I've been all these years. And the realization came right after you found out you won? What an amazing coincidence. Mom, please, I could hear the desperation in his voice. Give me a chance to explain. Let's have dinner together. Tomorrow? I'll pick you up. I was silent for a long time, pondering his offer. Part of me wanted to just hang up and forget he existed. The other part, the maternal part, still loving my only child no matter what, couldn't say no so easily. Okay, I said finally. But I'll see you alone, without Cheryl. Sure, whatever you say, Perkins agreed quickly. I'll come by tomorrow at 7? No, I'll come myself. Meet me at the Olive Garden at 7:30. I'd chosen a mid-range restaurant, not too expensive, but not cheap either, where we could talk quietly without being overheard. Great, I'll be waiting. Perkins sounded relieved. And Mom, thank you. The Olive Garden greeted me with dim lights and soft music. I arrived a little earlier than the appointed time to gather my thoughts. The waiter escorted me to a reserved table in the corner of the room, away from other diners. Can I get you anything while you wait? He asked. A glass of white wine, please, I replied, deciding I was going to need some courage tonight. As I sat with my glass of cool Chardonnay, I looked at the other guests in the restaurant, a young couple holding hands across the table, a family with 2 teenagers studying the menu with fascination, a group of business people discussing some charts on a tablet, ordinary people living ordinary lives. I wonder if any of them have ever won the lottery, and how did it change their lives? At exactly 7:30, Perkins showed up. He was wearing a suit I'd never seen before, navy blue with a fancy narrow tie, hair styled with gel, shoes shined to a high shine. He looked like he was on his way to an important business meeting, not dinner with his mother. Mom? He leaned over and kissed me on the cheek, something he hadn't done in years. You look beautiful. Thank you. I nodded to the chair across from me. Have a seat. Perkins sat down, glancing quickly at my glass of wine. Did you order already? I'd like a drink too. When the waiter brought the menu and took Perkins' drink order, we were finally alone. There was an awkward pause. How's work going? I asked, starting with a neutral topic. It's good. He relaxed a little. I got a promotion last week. I'm in charge of the entire finance department now. Congratulations, I nodded. You were always ambitious. Just like your father, Perkins smiled, clearly trying to evoke fond memories of Wilfred. We ordered our food. I chose the salmon and vegetables, Perkins the steak. The conversation flowed at a leisurely pace, skirting the sharp edges. He talked about his job, his vacation plans, the new car he was going to buy. I answered politely but with restraint, waiting for him to get to the real reason for our meeting. Finally, when the main courses were finished and the waiter brought the dessert menu, Perkins leaned back in his chair and sighed deeply. Mother, I must apologize again for the other night. I behaved terribly. I said things I should never have said. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. I stared at him carefully, trying to see if he was sincere. Why did you say all that, Perkins? I asked bluntly. Is that what you really think? That you don't need me without money? No, of course not, he looked genuinely upset. I was stressed, tired. Cheryl kept saying that we couldn't afford the extra expense, that we had our own plans. And I just snapped. It's unforgivable, I know. What's different now? I looked him straight in the eye. Why did you suddenly decide you wanted a relationship? Perkins hesitated, and I saw a shadow of uncertainty flicker in his eyes. I've been thinking a lot since that night, he began cautiously. About you, about our family, about the son I'd been all those years ago, and I realized I'd missed out on so much. You were always there for me, always supporting me, and I drifted away and I let work and other people come between us. He spoke smoothly, convincingly, but something in his tone seemed fake. Or maybe it was my resentment and distrust distorting my perception. And surely the news of your winnings had nothing to do with it? I asked, watching his reaction. Mom, I know how it looks. Perkins spread his hands. But I swear, I wanted to call you before I even heard about the lottery. I couldn't find the right words. And then I heard the news. I thought fate was giving us a chance to make things right. Fate? I couldn't help the slight chuckle. You never believed in fate, Perkins. You always said that people create their own reality through their own decisions. People change, he shrugged. The events of the last few days have made me rethink a lot of things. There was a pause. The waiter brought deserted cheesecake for me, chocolate mousse for Perkins. How's your renovation going? He asked, changing the subject. When do you plan to be back in the apartment? In a couple weeks, I answered. The work is going well. The kitchen is almost done, the bathroom too. The walls and the living room flooring are still to be finished. That's wonderful, he smiled. Maybe I could help with something? Moving things around, picking out new furniture? With your winnings, you might want to update the interior. This is it, I thought. First hint of money. I'll be fine, thank you, I replied coolly. I already have a plan for decorating. Sure, he nodded quickly. Just a suggestion. Speaking of plans, have you thought about what you're going to do with your winnings? Yes, I have some ideas. I hope you'll consult a financial advisor, Perkins said with a look of expertise. With that kind of money, it's important to have a sound investment strategy. The lottery office gave me the consultant's contacts. I nodded. I plan to meet with him next week. That's great. Perkins was obviously excited. You know, I could go with you. I have experience in financial matters. I could help you understand the intricacies. That won't be necessary. I took a sip of water. I'm capable of making my own decisions about my money. Of course, Mom, I don't doubt it. He backed away hurriedly. Just wanted to help. You know, a lot of lottery winners lose their winnings to misinvestments or scammers. I'll be careful, I assured him. Perkins twirled his fork in his hands, clearly considering how to continue the conversation. Mom, I've been meaning to ask, he finally began. Cheryl and I have been thinking about buying a new house for a long time, a bigger one in a better neighborhood. But prices are so high right now, and with the mortgage... He didn't finish, but his intent was obvious. I felt a wave of disappointment rising inside me, so that's why he'd come. Not to apologize, not to repair the relationship, but to ask for money. And you want me to help you with the down payment? I finished it for him. Not exactly. Perkins looked a little embarrassed. I thought maybe we could organize some sort of family investment project. You put some of your winnings into real estate that would go up in value, and Cheryl and I, well, we'd live there and take care of the house. I stared at him in silence, not believing my ears. He wasn't even trying to hide his selfish motives, just wrapping them up in the pretty wrapper of a family project. You mean I should buy you a house? I clarified. Not buy, but invest, he corrected quickly. It would be a win-win for everyone. You get a solid investment, and we get to live in a nice house. And who knows, maybe in the future you'll have grandchildren, and you'll have a place to visit them. Grandchildren. He knew how much I'd always wanted grandchildren, and he wasn't shy about using it. What about my apartment? I asked. Where would I live? Oh, you could stay in your apartment, Perkins said, as if he were doing me a favor. It would look great after the renovations, and you can come visit us whenever you want. How generous of you, I said with an irony he didn't seem to catch. Or if you want, we could set up a room for you in the new house, he added, excited by the idea. Sort of a separate guest apartment. You could come for weekends or if you find it hard to live alone. If I find it hard to live alone, I repeated slowly. You mean when I'm old enough to take care of myself? Well, I wouldn't put it that way. Perkins looked uncomfortable. It's just that at your age, sooner or later. My age, I nodded. The same age that made me a burden when I asked to stay with you temporarily. But now with my money, I'm suddenly welcome? Mom, you've got it all wrong. Perkins was getting annoyed. I'm offering a mutually beneficial solution for both of us. Your money will be working instead of sitting dead in an account. And if I say no, I asked you bluntly, if I decide to use the winnings for myself? Well, that would be your right, of course, he shrugged, but there was annoyance in his eyes. It just seems odd not to share your good fortune with your family. Family? I repeated the word, putting all the bitterness of the last few years into it. The same family that kicked me out the door when I needed help? The same family that told me that without money I wasn't needed? Mom, I apologized for what I said. Perkins was starting to lose patience. How many times do I have to say I'm sorry? I was wrong, I admit it. But can't you forgive and move on? Forgive, maybe, I answered calmly. Forgetting, no, and I certainly wouldn't trust you with my money. Is that what this is about? He leaned back in his chair. Are you getting back at me for the other night? Are you using your winnings to teach me a lesson? No, Perkins, I shook my head. I'm not getting revenge. I'm just finally seeing you for who you are, and I'm making decisions accordingly. And what do you think I am? There was a challenge in his voice. A man who only cares about money and status, I answered without anger. Just stating the fact. A man who evaluates people by their usefulness to himself, even his own mother. That's not fair, Perkins was indignant. I came here with a sincere desire to mend relations. Did you? I raised an eyebrow. And that's why you went straight to the question of how I'd dispose of the winnings? Is that why you offered to invest in a house for you and Cheryl? Perkins blushed, either with anger or shame. I was just suggesting an option that would be good for both of us, he muttered. I don't see anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a fair offer, I agreed. But you didn't come with a fair offer. You came with manipulation wrapped in fake apologies and talk of family. That's not true, Perkins raised his voice, attracting the attention of neighboring tables. Realizing this, he lowered his tone. I'm really sorry for what I said, and I really want to repair our relationship. Maybe, I nodded. But only because now I have money that could be useful to you. Is that really how you feel about your only son? Resentment appeared in his eyes. That I'm only interested in you because of money? Aren't you? I shrugged. When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When you invited me to dinner like tonight. When you took an interest in my life, my problems, my joys. Perkins was silent, obviously unable to find an answer. Exactly, I continued. For years you kept me at a distance. Your visits were few and short, your calls formal. And suddenly, as soon as you had the money, you remembered the family ties? What do you want from me, Mom? He looked tired. Do you want me to sprinkle ashes on my head? To beg for forgiveness? I admitted I was wrong. I apologized. What else do I have to do? Nothing, I answered calmly. You don't have to do anything, neither do I. What does that mean? It means I accept your apology, Perkins, but I don't accept your offer. What offer? He looked puzzled. Not about the house, not about repairing the relationship. I looked him straight in the eye. I think we're better off just the way we are. You go your way, I'll go mine. Are you, giving up on me? His voice trembled. Your own son? No, Perkins. I shook my head. You gave up on me years ago. I just accept that as a fact and stop clinging to illusions. But Mom... He looked genuinely shocked. We're family. Each other's only family. Family isn't just shared blood, Perkins. I sighed. It's caring, supportive, genuinely interested in each other. We haven't had any of that between us in years. And you don't want to fix that? He asked with desperation in his voice. Give us another chance? I've given chances, Perkins. Many chances for years. And every time you've shown me that I'm not a priority for you. Not even a top 10 priority. It's not fair, he muttered. I have my own life, my own career. Exactly, I nodded. You have your own life. And I'm going to have my own now too. Without me? He looked as if he couldn't believe what was happening. Without illusions, I corrected him. Without the expectations that never come true. Without the pain of constant disappointment. All because of one night? Because of a few ill-considered words? Perkins was getting angry. You're wiping out 43 years of a relationship because of one mistake? No, Perkins. I shook my head. Not because of one night, because of decades of neglect. Because even now, when you apologize, you're not thinking about me. You're thinking about my money. That's not true. He pounded his fist on the table, drawing attention again. I'm thinking about us, about our family, about getting a piece of my winnings. I finished for him. Be honest, at least for now, Perkins. At least with yourself. He opened his mouth to object, but closed it immediately, obviously unable to find the right words. I'll pay for dinner, I said, calling for the waiter. Consider it my parting gift. A parting gift? He looked confused. Are you seriously cutting all ties? I'm not being dramatic, Perkins, I smiled sadly. I'm just acknowledging reality. We haven't been a family in the true sense of the word for a long time, and your sudden desire to repair the relationship coinciding with my winnings only confirms it. I paid, leaving a generous tip, and got up from the table. Goodbye, Perkins, I said quietly. I wish you well, I do. Mom, wait, he stood up too. You can't just leave. We have to discuss everything. Find a solution. We've already discussed everything. I shook my head. And I found my solution. With these words, I turned and walked towards the exit, feeling my son's amazed look on my face. Perhaps for the first time in his life he saw me like this, determined, calm, confident in my choice. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath of the evening air. Strangely, instead of the expected pain and regret, I felt relief. It was as if I had shed the heavy weight I had been carrying for years, a load of unfulfilled hopes, of endless disappointments, of painful attachments. 2 weeks later, I moved back into my apartment. The renovation was completed, and the result exceeded all my expectations. Bright walls, new windows, a modern kitchen with beautiful appliances, a cozy bedroom with a comfortable bed, a spacious bathroom with blue tiles, which I dreamed of. My little studio turned into a real gem, stylish, functional, perfect for me. That same day, the bank notification came. The winnings had been deposited into my account. $600,000 minus the bank's commission, a sum that gave me a freedom of choice I'd never dreamed of before. I met with a financial advisor, Elena Marshall, who helped me develop a sound money management plan. I invested part of it in safe investments, providing myself with a steady income for the future. I put some of it aside for unexpected expenses and medical care, and some of it I decided to spend on the quality of life, the new furniture, clothes, and travel I'd always dreamed of. I accepted Owen's offer to work for his new company, but on my own terms, part-time, with the possibility of working from home sometimes. Not because of the money, I had enough of it now, but to stay active, socially connected, and feel useful. Gradually, my life was filled with new people and impressions. I enrolled in an art course, a hobby that had always attracted me but for which I never had enough time. There I met Dorothy Fleming, a widow my age with a terrific sense of humor and inexhaustible energy. We became fast friends and began to spend a lot of time together. We went to the theater, to exhibitions, had picnics in the park. Through Dorothy, I met a whole circle of interesting people. The same active retirees who did not want to spend the rest of their lives in front of the TV. Among them was Harold Newman, a former literature professor who had lost his wife 3 years earlier and was still learning to live without her. We talked to him often about Wilfred, about the loss, and about finding new meaning in life after such a blow. Perkins tried to contact me several times, calling, leaving messages, even coming to my apartment. But I was firm in my decision, not out of anger or a desire to punish him, but out of a realization that our relationship had become toxic a long time ago, and both of us would be happier if we accepted that and went our separate ways. Cheryl called once too, trying to clear up a misunderstanding. Her sweet voice and fake apology only strengthened my resolve. 6 months after winning the prize, I realized my longtime dream of traveling around Europe. 2 weeks in Paris, a week in Venice, 10 days in Barcelona. I walked along narrow streets, sat in cozy cafes, visited museums, and just enjoyed life, freedom, and new impressions. Back home, I often thought about how strangely life works. A job loss that seemed like a disaster led me to win the lottery. My son's rejection, which broke my heart, ultimately freed me from a toxic relationship. Age, which many considered a disadvantage, gave me the wisdom and courage to start a new chapter of life. Sitting on the balcony of my renovated apartment with a cup of tea and a new book, I watched the sunset over Lakewood and smiled. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. Not because of the money, although it certainly gave me the freedom to choose, but because I'd finally learned to appreciate myself, my wants and needs. Because I found real friends who saw me not as a purse or a burden, but as an interesting person with a rich inner world. Life went on, and this new chapter promised to be the brightest and most intense of all.